What is happening in a broad sense is the repudiation of the Western idea of secularism, with only Egypt under a military dictatorship still practicing it. If this is an achievement, well, I'm not sure it was worth it.
What do you think the impact is going to be, the other regimes in the area? Let's say Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan. We'll start with those three. What impact will this have on their governance and anything internal to their rule?
Well, interestingly enough, secularism, as practiced by the Ba'ath Party in Syria or before it in Iraq, before our invasion and regime change operation, it had no attraction whatsoever in places like Saudi Arabia. And it was essentially irrelevant in places like Jordan and Egypt. That is, Egypt tried on several occasions to achieve unity with Syria in the United Arab Republic. This failed in part because of differences over religion. Ironically, as I said, Egypt is now under a secular military dictatorship. The problem now is that the Salafist regime in Syria, if it practices democracy, which it has claimed it will, that is to say, Abu Muhammad al-Jolani has stressed that he is turning over the government to an elected government in Syria. If the Muslim Brotherhood tendencies that failed in Egypt and were overthrown with a military coup with our support, now establish themselves in Syria, then that does have ideological attraction to the undemocratic regimes in the Persian Gulf. So a lot depends on what happens. What does this new regime do? Does it persecute all the religious minorities who inhabit Syria, the Christians, the Druze? There's still a substantial Jewish population in Damascus. What's it going to do with these groups? What about the Alawites and other Shia?
Right.
We don't know. And we also don't know whether they're seriously going to try to introduce an Islamist democracy, which I'm sure the Turks will favor. And the Turks have now got great influence in Syria. I want to note also that in the last days of the Bashar al-Assad government, both Turkey and Russia on multiple occasions attempted to persuade Mr. Assad to make peace with the jihadis, and he declined. He basically controlled 70% of Syrian territory, and he thought it was up to the other side to compromise, not him. Now he's gone. And I think one of the reasons he's gone is basically his patrons, Turkey and Russia, and especially Russia, gave up on him. And Iran proved powerless to help him. One of the major effects of this really seismic change in the region is that it leaves Iran naked in front of Israeli striking power. And Iran has now lost its frontline deterrent capabilities that had been supplied by Hezbollah and Hamas. And it is now directly confronting Israel. And we know that in the days prior to this stunning development, more and more Iranians were openly advocating that Iran actually build the nuclear weapon that it has not tried to build. And I suspect those pressures are now intense because Iran needs a deterrent against Israel and the United States. And I suspect we will see it take the path of North Korea and develop its own nuclear deterrent. And that deterrent will probably be capable of striking the United States as well as Israel. So I'm not sure that this is the joyous moment that so many people depict it as. And I find it really ironic that our outgoing president, Mr. Biden, would celebrate the end of the secular regime in Syria without asking the question, what is going to follow it? I learned a long time ago when I was a kid in law school and I was disgusted with the Diem regime in South Vietnam, and Mr. Diem was assassinated by us. I thought, hooray, now there will be better days. And there was an old, hard-bitten Cuban guy who was retraining himself as a lawyer at the Harvard Law School at the time. He'd been ransomed out of Cuba for a tractor. And he said to me, "Why are you happy? Do you know what's going to come next? Why do you assume the next guy is going to be more effective than the one you just got rid of?" And I would say in the case of Syria, we don't have any idea what is going to happen. And I would add a final point, and that is we're not even talking to the various parties that might know. Iran, Turkey. Turkey may be a member of NATO, but we are deeply estranged. We don't talk to the Russians. Antony Blinken, in his 4 years in office, has not once visited Moscow. Sergei Lavrov last came to Washington 5 years ago. There is no diplomacy. We exchange combative talking points with the Chinese. We don't listen to each other. We don't have a dialogue. We have a show. And so the outgoing Biden administration is bequeathing to its successor an incredible number of very fluid, potentially disastrous situations, two of them already possible points of origin for a nuclear exchange, Ukraine, the Taiwan Strait, and Iran, I think now much more likely to go nuclear than it ever was before.